The story begins with a glimpse into a past rejection, where a desperate voice cries out to a departing figure named Rushi-sama. This world operates under a unique social hierarchy where humanity includes a third gender dynamic known as Dom and Sub. Those born as subs harbor an innate, biological desire to be ruled, while Doms possess a corresponding instinct to control and dominate their partners. Statistics suggest that individuals possessing this third gender dynamic comprise roughly 30% of the total population. In the flashback, a figure coldly commands a kneeling supplicant to cease following them, declaring the severance of their bond and abandoning the role of their Dom. The narrative shifts to the present reality of apartment 202, occupied by Chigusa Kusunoki. Chigusa busies herself in her modest kitchen, preparing a meal centered around bean sprouts, a staple for her budget-conscious lifestyle. She speaks affectionately to a framed memorial photograph of her parents, offering a portion of the freshly cooked meal to their memory. Her internal thoughts reveal her financial precarity. Having entered university as a scholarship student, she relies heavily on part-time work to cover her tuition, leaving her with little disposable income. She rationalizes her single status by calculating the exorbitant costs associated with dates and anniversaries, concluding that romance is a financial burden she cannot afford. Despite this pragmatic justification, admitting it aloud leaves her feeling hollow. She reassures herself that her academic life goes well and she maintains good relationships with her friends, finding a unique enjoyment in her frugal existence. However, a sudden wave of vertigo assaults her, a recurring symptom she has recently begun to experience despite her history of robust health. Her contemplation breaks when the doorbell chimes. Chigusa opens the door to find a man of striking physical appearance standing in the hallway, apologizing for the late intrusion. Chigusa is immediately struck by his sparkling aura and notably long eyelashes, internally categorizing him as an insanely sparkly handsome guy juxtaposed against her rundown apartment building. He introduces himself as her new neighbor who has just moved in next door. This neighbor, Sakibara, presents her with a greeting gift, a package of top-grade A5 black Wagyu beef. The sheer value of the meat stuns Chigusa, who perceives a holy glow emanating from the expensive gift. She hesitates to accept such a lavish item without offering anything in return. Reacting impulsively to balance the scales, she asks him to wait and rushes back into her kitchen. She returns with several containers of her freshly cooked bean sprout dishes, apologetically offering them to him while acknowledging that cooking for one person can be difficult. Sakibara accepts the homemade food with genuine enthusiasm, his demeanor brightening significantly. He expresses sincere happiness, a reaction that Chigusa finds unexpectedly friendly and charming. Later that evening, Chigusa discovers Sakibara crouching in the corridor, looking distressed amidst a scattering of clothes. He explains that the wind scattered his laundry, creating a chaotic mess. Chigusa notices he is smiling despite the trouble, a mismatch of expression and situation that confuses her. She steps in to assist him, gathering the garments and advising him to use laundry clips to secure the clothes to the hangers. Sakibara stares at the plastic clips in wonder, confessing he did not know such items existed. Chigusa, amused by his ignorance of common household items, explains that they are readily available at 100 yen shops and offers him some of hers. Sakibara's reaction to the concept of a 100 yen shop is one of bewilderment and excitement. He offers to pay her, but she dismisses the cost as negligible. He admits he has never visited a 100 yen shop in his life, a revelation that shocks Chigusa to her core. She enthusiastically educates him on the value of these stores, explaining how one can furnish an entire kitchen for under 1,000 yen. Sakibara listens intently, remarking that about 60% of the items she describes are things he owns, but he finds her ability to derive joy from these small, everyday efficiencies to be wonderful. His compliment strikes a chord with Chigusa, as she notes it is the first time anyone has validated her lifestyle in such a way. The scene transitions to a university setting where Chigusa converses with her friends, Kaoru and others. Her friends tease her about her interest in the neighbor, suggesting it might be love, though Chigusa denies knowing enough about him yet. The conversation shifts to her ex-boyfriend, Hajime, whom they spot nearby. Chigusa expresses relief that Hajime has found a new girlfriend, harboring guilt over their past breakup. Her friends remind her that the breakup occurred because Hajime was a dom and Chigusa could not fulfill the role of a sub, a fundamental incompatibility. They reassure her that she is normal and not at fault for failing to meet a dom's needs. The discussion deepens into the medical realities of the dom/sub dynamic. Her friends explain that when doms or subs endure long periods without their respective partners, they suffer from severe health consequences. Symptoms include autonomic imbalance, depression, and insomnia. They clarify that unlike sexual sadism or masochism, these are inborn instincts. Doms desire to discipline, protect, and be trusted, while subs crave devotion and domination. Chigusa muses on the difficulty of these dynamics, suggesting that even normal relationships are hard enough. However, she also privately finds the concept of two people fitting together perfectly, like concave and convex shapes filling each other's voids, to be somewhat enviable, likening it to fate. During lunch, Chigusa pushes her food away, citing a lack of appetite. Her friends notice she has barely eaten and point out that she has been unwell frequently of late. They accuse her of working too many shifts and overextending herself for others, a habit they view as self-sacrificing to a fault. Chigusa deflects their concern, offering her lunch to them instead, insisting that seeing people she likes happy brings her satisfaction. Internally, however, she battles a lingering sickness that makes the day feel interminably long. Back at her apartment, the quiet is shattered by a scream of fire penetrating through the wall. Adrenaline surging, Chigusa rushes to the neighbor's door. She finds Sakibara panic-stricken in a smoke-filled kitchen, a frying pan engulfed in flames. He attempts to douse it with water, but Chigusa screams for him to stop, knowing that water will exacerbate a grease fire. She frantically searches for a lid and successfully smothers the flames. As the smoke clears, Chigusa surveys the chaotic state of his apartment. Expensive furniture that is far too large for the small space clutters the room, leaving little space to move. Sakibara, sitting dejectedly amidst the mess, explains he was attempting to cook a chicken breast and kale tranche, a complex French dish prepared by the chef at his family home. This casual mention of a family chef confirms Chigusa's suspicion that he comes from immense wealth. He admits his parents run a company and that he moved into this cheap apartment based solely on a real estate agent's recommendation, unaware of the stark difference in living standards. He confesses that only his sofa fit into the apartment, which led to the clutter. Determined to help, Chigusa assists him in organizing the apartment. She employs her knowledge of storage and space efficiency to tidy the room, transforming the chaotic space into a well-ordered environment. Sakibara watches in awe, jokingly asking if he can call her master, and expressing a desire to learn her Cinderella fit techniques. They share a meal of the salvaged food, and Sakibara praises the tenderness of the meat and the deliciousness of Chigusa's cooking. He notices that she is eating with gusto and points out that she barely touched her lunch earlier. Chigusa realizes with surprise that her nausea and dizziness have completely vanished. She remarks on the strangeness of her recovery, noting that she usually doesn't feel better so quickly. Sakibara asks if being with someone or engaging in activity usually alleviates her symptoms. He stares at her intensely, his demeanor shifting from the clumsy neighbor to something more perceptive and commanding. Chigusa attempts to clean up the dishes, insisting she enjoys housework, but Sakibara stops her, telling her she overworks herself. He playfully insists on taking care of her to celebrate their deepening friendship, though he worries he might break the dishes. As Chigusa watches him, she feels a profound warmth spreading through her body and heart, a sensation that transcends mere fun or happiness. She describes it as feeling filled up. Sakibara finishes cleaning and offers her coffee. When she responds using his surname, he abruptly corrects her, telling her to call him by his given name, Shino, or rather, just Chigusa, referring to her. He tells her it's fine now, and then, with a sudden drop in vocal register and a shift in aura, he issues a single command: sit. The command hits Chigusa with physical force. Her body instantly loses strength and she collapses to the floor. Her mind reels in confusion, but her heart pounds violently against her ribs, screaming in reaction to his voice. Shino looms over her, his presence now dominating the room. He commands her to look at him and not to move. Chigusa finds herself unable to look away, her instincts locking onto his gaze. He holds her face, his thumb tracing her cheek, and tells her not to avert her eyes. Shino observes her reaction closely. He notes that her body feels strange to her, and he confirms that if she obeys properly, he will praise her. Chigusa, overwhelmed and confused, admits internally that she understands nothing of what is happening, yet she feels a compulsion to leave everything to him. She surrenders to the moment, letting out a small, breathless sound. Shino smiles, a satisfied and knowing expression on his face. He confirms his suspicion, stating that she is indeed a sub, finally recognizing the nature that she herself had denied. In the quiet confines of the apartment, Chigusa sits on the floor, her expression a mixture of confusion and hesitancy as she looks up at Rushi, who sits casually opposite her. She stammers, finally voicing the question that has been plaguing her thoughts, asking if he is a sub. Rushi meets her gaze steadily and confirms her suspicion with a simple affirmative. However, as Chigusa begins to recall a memory from middle school regarding subs, Rushi interjects, clarifying that her assumption is incorrect. He states firmly that he is normal, inquiring if she has ever undergone proper testing for her dynamic. Rushi mentions that he could allow her to take his suppressants, though he trails off, noting that they are not designed for subs and he cannot guarantee their efficacy. He emphasizes that for the immediate moment, they must prioritize managing her current volatile condition. Rushi then drops a revelation that shifts the entire atmosphere of the room. He declares that the reason he has suppressants is that he is a dom. Chigusa stares at him, her mind struggling to process the information as the word echoes in her thoughts. She internally defines the term, understanding it as someone who possesses the desire to dominate, and the realization that the man before her falls into this category causes her thoughts to spiral into chaos. While her mind reels in confusion, Rushi's voice cuts through the mental fog with clarity and authority. He vows absolutely that he will not do anything Chigusa dislikes, instructing her to leave the situation to him for the time being. Rushi leans in closer, his demeanor shifting to one of control and comfort, and he whispers a praise, calling her a good girl. The effect on Chigusa is instantaneous and visceral. She feels her blood boiling beneath her skin, a sensation of intense heat washing over her. Observing her flushed state, Rushi asks if she requires water, to which she agrees. He inquires about her well-being, but Chigusa, overwhelmed by the intensity of the interaction, attempts to retreat, stating she will be fine and asking him to wait. However, as he moves to leave, a sudden, desperate urge overtakes her. She clutches at him, pleading with him not to go. Rushi pauses, understanding the subtext of her reaction. He gently takes her hand, asking if she likes his touch, and she breathlessly affirms that she does. He embraces her, holding her close to soothe her physiological response, visual. The narrative shifts to the following day, where Rushi decides that she needs professional medical attention and declares he will accompany her to the hospital to get examined. At the medical facility, a doctor delivers the diagnosis with certainty. Chigusa is without a doubt a sub. Chigusa is perplexed, noting that she had previously been diagnosed as normal. The doctor explains that while most people present their dynamic in their early teens, there are rare cases where it manifests later in life, which accounts for her negative test results until now. He prescribes suppressants for her to take while monitoring her condition. However, the doctor offers a crucial warning that relying solely on medication is detrimental. He recommends regularly releasing her urges. He provides information on government-approved facilities designed exclusively for DOMs and subs specifically for individuals without partners, though he notes that reservations can be difficult to secure due to the scarcity of such locations. He adds that ideally, having a partner would be the best solution. Chigusa exits the examination room and returns to the waiting area where Rushi sits. She informs him that the diagnosis verified she is indeed a sub, managing a strained laugh as she breaks the news. Rushi asks how the examination went, and she deflects, feeling the awkwardness of the situation wash over her. Memories of the previous night, specifically the intimacy of his hand and the boiling sensation in her blood, flood her mind, causing her immense embarrassment as she realizes how out of control she was. She gathers the courage to ask Rushi how he deduced she was a sub before the doctors did. Rushi observes her flushed face and asks if she is still feeling unwell, but she insists she is fine. He explains that while he wasn't completely sure, he noted that she often felt unwell, and combined with the tendency of subs to want to devote themselves to a partner, he made an educated guess. Chigusa apologizes for inadvertently baiting him into a reaction, but expresses relief that they finally identified the root cause of her poor health. Rushi dismisses the need for an apology and offers his support. He reveals that he has been a dom for over 10 years, making him quite familiar with managing these dynamics. He tells her that if he is nearby, he can be reliable and urges her to rely on him for anything she needs. Chigusa reflects on her earlier anxiety, realizing that Rushi's presence alleviated her fears and that she would have been lost had she been alone. She thanks him sincerely. As they converse, Chigusa asks about his schedule, concerned that she dragged him to the hospital when he might have had plans. She compares herself to an elementary schooler for needing an escort, but admits that skipping a lecture for the first time gave her a small thrill of excitement. Rushi reveals he had 2 university lectures scheduled for the day but assures her it is acceptable to take a day off. Chigusa is surprised to learn he is a university student, noting that since she is 19, he must be a year younger than her. They exchange information about their schooling and discover a startling coincidence. They attend the same university. The realization that they live in adjacent apartments and attend the same school strikes them both. Chigusa notes that the proximity of their apartment building to the campus makes sense. As they walk together near the campus, Chigusa becomes self-conscious, feeling the weight of strangers' gazes upon them. Rushi, unbothered, places a hand on her head and encourages her to do her best in class before parting ways to head to his own destination. The casual intimacy of the gesture catches Chigusa off guard. Later, Rushi is seen with his peers, his demeanor shifting entirely. His friends ask if he has a third period, and he adopts a cool, distant persona, claiming he has a business trip to China. Chigusa observes this transformation from a distance, noting the intense gap between the polite, caring man she knows and the handsome guy mode he projects to the public, finding the whiplash of his dual nature intense. She acknowledges to herself that Rushi stands out significantly. A friend of Chigusa, Yui, approaches her, commenting on Rushi's fame. Yui is shocked that Chigusa is unaware of Rushi's background. Yui explains that Rushi is the heir to the Rushi Group, the founders of the prestigious Reborn Hotel. She details his high status, mentioning that he declined a beauty contest because he felt it was too much for him, despite being the ultimate ladies' man, who was guaranteed to win the school festival star contest as a freshman. Chigusa is stunned by this information, realizing she had no idea he was such an amazing and high-spec individual. Yui then connects the dots, realizing that the Koyama-kun, who lives next door to Chigusa, is the same famous Rushi. She screams in shock, drawing Rushi's attention. Rushi approaches them, commenting on Yui's rude scream, while Yui tries to compose herself. Chigusa introduces Yui, but the attention from the surrounding crowd becomes overwhelming. Rushi's presence causes excitement among the students, and Chigusa feels a sudden pang of loneliness and inadequacy. She insists to Yui that she and Rushi aren't anything, despite Yui's assumption that they had become close. Chigusa questions if she was the only one who believed they shared a connection. Overcome by the disparity in their social standing and the intensity of the situation, she invents an urgent excuse and flees the scene. Chigusa retreats to a secluded library archive room, trying to calm her racing heart. Visual. She rationalizes that she only pushed herself to interact with him out of obligation, but acknowledges that everything Rushi says or does makes her heart race. She questions if this reaction is solely because she has awakened as a sub and wonders if she will react this way to every dom she meets from now on. Just as she resolves to get used to it, the door opens and Rushi appears, grabbing her arm. Rushi, out of breath, explains that he chased after her because he thought she was having another medical episode, noting that she was acting strangely earlier. Chigusa denies this, flustered by his concern. Rushi remains unconvinced and checks her for her medication, but Chigusa insists she already took it. He points out that suppressants are mainly preventative and do not work well once an episode has already started. He decides that they need to address her condition immediately, right there in the library. Chigusa protests, arguing that it is a place for play and study, and that Rushi likely has a lecture to attend. Ignoring her protests, Rushi maneuvers her onto the floor. Visual. He commands her to be quiet. He then issues a direct order, "Listen to what I say." The command hits Chigusa with physical force. Her brain feels as though it is melting, and she finds herself unable to resist the authority in his voice. Rushi leans over her, stating that they need to properly decide on a safe word, as their previous interaction had happened in the heat of the moment without established boundaries. He asks if she knows what a command is. When she expresses confusion, he explains that it is an order a dom gives to a sub, such as come, kneel, or look. He demonstrates by using the command look, and Chigusa finds herself physically unable to look away from him. He explains the mechanics of the dynamic. When a command is used, a sub instinctively obeys. Therefore, a safe word is essential. It is a word used when the sub wants to refuse a command. He emphasizes that if Chigusa says the safe word, play stops no matter what. He stresses that this is vital for her protection, regardless of who her partner is in the future. They agree on a safe word, though the specific word is kept between them. Rushi then shifts the dynamic, testing the boundaries immediately. He asks if she finished her assignment, then issues a command, "Focus over here." Chigusa, flustered and aware that people are nearby in the library, tries to resist. Rushi commands her to stay, then contradicts it by commanding her to come here. Chigusa panics, worrying that if someone saw them in this compromising position, it would be disastrous. She verbally expresses that she doesn't want to do this. Rushi challenges her, stating that if she truly dislikes it, she should say the safe word, promising that he will stop right away if she does. He presses her, asking why she isn't saying it. Chigusa struggles internally. She knows she needs to say the word to stop the escalation and protect herself from being discovered. However, as she looks at him, she realizes a conflicting truth. She does not want him to stop. The atmosphere in the library archive room remains thick with the scent of sudden intimacy. Rushi sits composed on the metal folding chair, while Chigusa, straddling his lap, leans into the embrace he offered. He initiates the kiss, his mouth meeting hers with a deliberate slowness that contradicts the urgency of their earlier conversation. He murmurs against her lips that he will proceed exactly the way she likes, surrendering control to her desires in this suspended moment. The kiss deepens, becoming an all-consuming sensory experience that blurs the edges of Chigusa's vision. Her eyes widen in shock before fluttering shut as the sensation overwhelms her nervous system. Every point of contact, his hand on her waist, her fingers gripping his shoulder, seems to amplify the heat coursing through her blood. Her body reacts involuntarily, a sharp twitch jolting through her spine as the pleasure strikes a nerve. She breaks the kiss, breathless and disoriented, her voice trembling as she whispers his family name, Chigusa. Rushi pulls back slightly, his expression softening into a satisfied smile. He praises her performance with a calm, "well done," treating the interaction as a successful exercise in managing her condition. He responds to her calling his name with a simple affirmation, but Chigusa remains in a daze, her mind unable to catch up to the physical reality. He observes her vacant expression and notes that she is still spaced out. Chigusa admits that her condition feels lightheaded, the aftereffects of the play leaving her unmoored. Rushi, ever the pragmatist, asks if she feels well enough to attend her next lecture, bringing the mundane reality of university life crashing back into the room. Chigusa sits in the lecture hall later, but her mind is miles away, consumed by a heavy, sinking feeling of regret and confusion. She stares blankly at her notes, agonizing over her actions. She realizes she initiated the kiss simply because he gave her permission to do whatever she liked, and she fears she misread the situation. She worries that because he maintained such a gentle expression, she acted as if the intimacy meant nothing, potentially making him uncomfortable. The realization that the desires of a sub can be so terrifyingly consuming sends her into a spiral of self-loathing. She buries her face in her hands, convinced she has freaked him out and ruined everything, unable to recall a single word from the professor's lecture. As the lecture ends, Rushi appears behind her, his demeanor unchanged and cheerful. He suggests they return home together. Chigusa recoils in surprise, her internal monologue screaming in panic about how she should react to him now. Rushi ignores her flustered state and places a hand on her head, insisting that they rest. He points out that she suffered a medical episode earlier and requires downtime. Chigusa attempts to decline, stammering about a part-time job, claiming she is full of energy, but her protests are weak against his insistence. They find themselves in the back of a taxi. Rushi offers her a bottle of fancy-looking cider he produced from somewhere, trying to ease the tension. Chigusa initially refuses, trying to maintain distance, but quickly capitulates, accepting the drink. As the carbonation fizzes, she realizes the pressure in the air has dissipated, leaving her alone with her racing heart. Rushi asks if he should take her straight home, and the casual consideration in his voice causes her heart to pound so violently she fears she might stop breathing. Chigusa gazes at him, analyzing her internal state. She wonders if this intense physical reaction is merely the physiological effect of being a sub, or something more profound. To her, the sensation is indistinguishable from being in love. She questions how people in this dynamic-oriented world differentiate between biological submission and genuine romantic affection. The uncertainty weighs heavily on her. Rushi seemed unaffected by their kiss, treating it clinically, which makes her feel that no matter how many hearts she had, they would all be broken. She resolves that she must take control of her situation immediately. She decides she cannot keep relying on Rushi forever. She must find a way to manage her condition independently. Back in the safety of her apartment, Chigusa scours the internet for solutions. She reviews a list of facilities, recalling the doctor's warning that appointments are difficult to secure. The screen displays a schedule full of X marks, indicating no vacancies. However, she stumbles upon a site for a place called Dolls Club. The advertisement boasts availability and accepts same-day reservations. Desperate and not fully understanding the nature of the service, she books an appointment, thinking she is following medical advice. The doorbell rings, signaling the arrival of the service provider. Chigusa opens the door to reveal a young man named Minato Sasama. He is stylish and modern, defying her expectations of a medical professional. He introduces himself as being dispatched from Doll's Club and confirms she is the client. Chigusa nervously welcomes him in, asking him to take care of her. Minato enters and immediately shifts into a casual, professional familiarity. He asks if she has any specific plays she likes or dislikes. Chigusa, naive to the terminology, admits she only recently presented as a sub and is inexperienced. Minato smiles, telling her not to be nervous, and decides they will start with a 60-minute course to figure out her preferences. He expresses happiness at being her first partner, a statement that lands with an unsettling weight. He reaches out to touch her, promising to be gentle. Chigusa flinches, terror spiking in her chest despite her attempts to reassure herself. Her mind flashes back to a recent memory involving Rushi, highlighting the contrast. In the memory, Rushi stands in her kitchen, inspecting a meal she attempted to cook. She had failed miserably and resorted to plating ready-made retort food. Rushi, noticing her fatigue from the earlier episode at the university, took over. He prepared a gentle meal for her, a warm porridge with a plum on top, and fed it to her with care, telling her to eat while it was warm. The memory is suffused with warmth and safety. Back in the present, the reality is starkly different. Minato moves to kiss her or touch her intimately, and Chigusa's body violently rejects it. She shoves him away with both hands, shouting for him to wait. She fabricates a lie about a delivery arriving to buy herself distance. Standing apart from him, she is confused by her own reaction. She thought she understood what play was supposed to be, but the relief she felt when she pushed him away is undeniable. She wonders why this feels so fundamentally wrong compared to her interactions with Rushi. A distinct knocking sound comes from the front door. Minato looks confused, but Chigusa seizes the opportunity, apologizing as she rushes to answer it. She opens the door to find Rushi standing there. He looks apologetic, starting to explain his sudden arrival. The moment Chigusa sees Rushi's face, the tension that had been holding her upright snaps. Relief floods her system so intensely that her knees give out, and she collapses onto the entryway floor. Rushi immediately crouches to check on her, asking if she is okay. Minato steps out from the apartment, witnessing the scene, and asks if she is all right. Minato assesses the tableau of the woman on the floor and the new man. He shrewdly deduces that her legs gave out halfway through the session. Rushi glances up, his expression hardening as he clocks the stranger in Chigusa's apartment. Minato, misreading the dynamic or perhaps not caring, asks Rushi if he can borrow Chigusa if they aren't in a hurry, claiming he is on a schedule. He insists he isn't doing anything wrong, treating Chigusa like a book time slot rather than a person. Chigusa is paralyzed with mortification, thinking she never wanted Rushi to see this side of her life. Rushi stands up, his demeanor shifting from concerned neighbor to commanding dom. He grips Minato's arm firmly. "I'll buy that time," he declares, his voice brooking no argument. "How much is it?" Minato accepts the payment, unbothered by the dismissal as long as he is compensated. He hands the cash over and prepares to leave, casually asking if Rushi is angry. Before exiting, Minato drops a parting comment that cuts deep. "So you already have a dom close to you. Compatibility matters too." Once the door closes, the silence in the apartment is heavy. Rushi turns to Chigusa, demanding an explanation for why she let a stranger into her home. Chigusa, tears welling in her eyes, tries to defend her logic. She explains she found a site that dispatches professional doms, believing she was following the doctor's orders to release her urges and manage her condition independently. Rushi corrects her, his voice stern but informative. He reveals that the site she used was not a medical facility, but a sex service, designed for people with specific fetishes who want to skip the preliminaries and go straight to the act. He emphasizes that it is completely different from the government-approved facilities the doctor mentioned. Chigusa is devastated by her ignorance and the danger she put herself in. She covers her face, sobbing. She confesses her fear. If her life from now on is always going to be about play and managing these urges, she cannot keep burdening Rushi. She insists that since they are just neighbors, she has to be able to handle this by herself, even if today was a failure. Rushi watches her crumble, his expression softening into resolve. He steps forward and pulls her into his arms, silencing her spiraling thoughts. He issues a new command, one that redefines their entire relationship. "Be my partner," he says, holding her close. "Mine." The late afternoon sun filters through the blinds of the cluttered apartment, illuminating a scene of sudden, breathless intimacy. Suga, a young man with dark, intense eyes, looms over Chigusa, pinning her against the tatami mats with a dominance that shifts the very air in the room. He presses the question of their relationship status, demanding to know if they are merely neighbors or something more profound. Chigusa, her hair splayed out beneath her, gazes up in confusion, her heart hammering against her ribs as she processes the label he offers, partner. Suga confirms this designation with a curt, heavy affirmation, leaving no room for ambiguity. Chigusa averts her eyes, flustered and uncertain, stammering that she doesn't understand the depth of his commitment. She questions whether he intends to rely on her, unable to fathom why a man of his stature would go to such lengths for someone like her. Suga's expression tightens, his gaze narrowing as he reveals the root of his actions. He admits that the mere concept of her relying on another man ignited a visceral distaste within him, a feeling akin to jealousy that he hadn't planned to verbalize. He attempts to rationalize this possessiveness by citing her reckless nature, claiming that he cannot leave her unsupervised lest she cause a fire or an accident, a statement that stings Chigusa with its blunt truth. She protests the harsh assessment, but he overrides her objections, framing their partnership as a mutual exchange of utility. He declares that they exist to satisfy one another's needs. He will fulfill her desires, and she, in turn, will fulfill his, creating a closed loop of reliance. Chigusa stares at her hand, contemplating the weight of his words and the care he has already shown her. A surge of determination rises within her. She yearns to reciprocate, to be good enough to return the favor. She accepts the title of partner, bowing her head and formally asking him to take care of her, sealing their agreement. Suga smiles, the tension breaking into a moment of satisfaction as he declares the matter settled. Immediately shifting gears, Suga adopts a pragmatic tone, deciding that they must establish basic rules for this new dynamic. Chigusa, still reeling, asks for clarification on what being partners entails. Suga explains that while they will explore their specific play preferences slowly, the fundamental rule is absolute mutual reliance. He commands her not to endure hardship alone until her health suffers, and forbids her from running away from her problems. Chigusa agrees enthusiastically, her voice ringing with compliance. However, Suga adds a sharp caveat. If either of them acquires a romantic lover, the relationship ends immediately. Chigusa accepts this condition somberly, acknowledging the logic behind it. Suga then leans back, his demeanor shifting from serious to annoyed as he addresses her stiff behavior. He questions why she treats their partnership like a relationship of convenience and demands she drop the formalities. He instructs her to call him Rushi instead of his surname, invading her personal space to emphasize the command. He presses his body close to hers, his breath hitching against her skin, challenging her to say the name. Chigusa, overwhelmed by his proximity and the scent of him, stammers and retreats, crying out that he is too close. Rushi watches her flee with a satisfied smirk, noting that her reaction will suffice for now. Undeterred by her shyness, Rushi pivots to the immediate future, asking if she has plans for the weekend. When Chigusa confirms she is free, he casually invites her out, sparking a cascade of internal panic within her. She realizes with a jolt that this engagement has rapidly escalated into something serious, her mind racing with the implications of a date with someone she views as a prince. The scene shifts to the interior of a commuter train. Chigusa stands beside Rushi, clutching the strap and marveling at his presence. Even in the mundane setting of public transport, Rushi exudes an aura of elegance that makes him look like a picture, a stark contrast to her own ordinary existence. She wonders how their worlds ever collided. Rushi breaks her trance by teasing her about her inability to use the touch-pay system, laughing at her airhead moment. He leans in, ignoring the crowded carriage, and suggests they get lunch, his proximity once again causing Chigusa to flush and stammer about the lack of personal space. They arrive at an upscale restaurant with an open-air terrace. Chigusa freezes, her anxiety spiking as she realizes she is woefully out of place. She mentally tallies the contents of her wallet, dreading the bill, and frets over her lack of proper table manners. She watches Rushi eat with practiced elegance, reminding herself of his wealth and status. Rushi, noticing her paralysis, cuts through her insecurity with a direct action. He holds a piece of food to her mouth, commanding her to say, "Ah." Chigusa hesitates, conscious of the public gaze, but Rushi insists, feeding her like a child or a pet. He watches her chew, a look of genuine relief crossing his face when she confirms it is delicious. Chigusa finds herself enjoying the moment despite the awkwardness, noting that she has never done something so intimate even with past boyfriends. However, reality crashes back down when the check arrives. The total is 30,000 yen. Chigusa turns pale, mentally screaming that the bill is brutal, and apologizes for not having enough cash. Rushi dismisses her concern instantly, producing a credit card and stating that since he invited her, he will pay. As they leave the restaurant, Rushi seems energized, suggesting their next stop be a movie. However, his idea of a movie date involves renting out the entire theater, a proposal that sends Chigusa into a panic. She frantically waves her hands, shouting that his ideas are too extreme for a poor person like her to handle. Desperate to regain some control and lower the stakes, she drags him to a noisy, vibrant game center. Rushi stands amidst the flashing lights and electronic sounds, eyes wide, admitting he has never set foot in an arcade before. Chigusa, feeling more in her element, points to a claw machine featuring a white teddy bear and asks if he thinks he can win it. Rushi approaches the challenge with academic rigor. He adjusts his glasses, recalling studies he conducted on the mechanics of such machines to win prizes efficiently. With surgical precision, he maneuvers the claw. The crane descends, secures the prize, and drops it into the chute on the very first try. Chigusa erupts in joy, cheering for his success, while Rushi hands her the bear with a casual "of course." He watches her cradle the toy, his own expression softening into a gentle smile as he realizes he is genuinely having fun. They spend the rest of the afternoon moving from game to game, the barrier of their class difference melting away in the heat of the arcade. Rushi plays until he fails to win a prize, but the mood remains light. As evening approaches, they retreat to a quiet park. The sky turns a soft gradient of twilight colors. Rushi splits a Papico ice cream tube in half, handing one share to Chigusa, a simple, common gesture that contrasts sharply with the expensive lunch. They sit on the swings, swaying gently. Chigusa's mood dips slightly as she apologizes again, feeling that compared to the luxury he is accustomed to, she hasn't shown him anything special. Rushi stops his swing and looks at her with intense seriousness. He confesses that his home life was far from normal, and consequently, every mundane thing they did today felt incredibly fresh and exciting to him. He stands up and walks over to her swing, towering over her seated form, his hands gripping the chains on either side of her. He looks down into her eyes and admits that since meeting her, he has wanted to see the world she sees. Chigusa is struck silent by this admission. Memories of her past surface, her parents dying in a traffic accident, the whispers of neighbors, the pitying glances she received throughout her childhood. She realizes that she has always been an object of pity, someone viewed through the lens of tragedy. But Rushi is different. He doesn't pity her, he wants to know her. He envies her perspective. This realization brings tears to her eyes. She grips the chains of the swing, her heart swelling with an emotion that transcends their agreement of dominance or partnership. Whether they match, whether she is a sub and he is a dom, none of it matters in this suspended moment. She looks up at him, her face flushed and eyes shimmering, and confesses the truth that has been building all day. She likes him.